Welcome to Blurred Lines. I'm Jay, and these are true horror stories. To protect the people who shared them, names and identifying details have been changed, but everything else is exactly as they experienced it. I'm going to share something that's been happening on my property for years. I've reported it to police, talked to other orchard owners in the area, even contacted the Forestry Service. Nobody has any explanation that makes sense. My name's Nolan. I'm 31, and I took over my dad's apple orchard about 5 years ago when he passed from cancer. It's 80 acres in eastern Washington, been in our family since the 50s. The property borders old-growth forest on two sides, and we're pretty isolated out here. Nearest town is 18 miles away. Dad ran this orchard for 40 years. Never once mentioned anything weird happening, but I've been dealing with something ever since I took over. And it happens every single autumn during harvest season. The first year, I thought it was just kids. It was October, maybe 2018, and I was doing my morning rounds checking the trees. I noticed these small footprints in the dirt. Bare feet, child-sized. They led from the forest edge through my orchard rows and then back into the woods. The weird part was they went into sections of the orchard that are pretty far from any road or trail. No kid could get there easily without an adult. I figured maybe some family was hiking in the forest and their kid wandered into my property. It bothered me a bit because we use pesticides, and I didn't want anyone getting sick, but I didn't think much beyond that. The next autumn, it happened again. But this time I found one of my picking ladders moved from where I'd left it. Some canvas picking bags were missing from my equipment shed too. And the footprints were everywhere. Dozens of trails of small bare feet crisscrossing through the orchard. All during nights when temperatures dropped into the 40s. Cold enough that walking barefoot would be pretty uncomfortable. I called the sheriff's office, filed a report about the stolen equipment. They came out, looked around, took some photos of the footprints. The deputy said they'd had reports of transients camping in the national forest nearby. And maybe I was dealing with that, but he seemed confused about the bare feet thing too. That winter, I installed motion sensor lights around the orchard, especially near the equipment buildings. Figured that would scare off whoever was doing this. The following October, the lights never triggered, but the evidence was back anyway. This time it was worse. I found one entire Honeycrisp tree completely stripped of fruit overnight. Every single apple gone. Not dropped on the ground, not scattered around. Just gone. Taken systematically from the tree. The footprints were everywhere again. Small and bare. I followed one trail into the forest for maybe a mile before I lost it. The thing that really got to me was how the prints were positioned on some of the trails. Like whoever was making them was walking on the balls of their feet, leaving these elongated prints that didn't look quite right. I started staying up some nights, watching from my house with binoculars. Never saw anything. But on foggy nights, I'd wake up the next morning and find fresh prints. Always on foggy nights, my sister Rachel suggested I was dealing with bear or deer damage, and maybe the footprints were unrelated. But I've lived around orchards my whole life. I know what animal damage looks like. This was different. The apples were being picked, not knocked down or eaten on the spot. Last autumn, I'd had enough. My brother-in-law Daniel is really into hunting and has all this expensive night vision equipment. I asked him to come out during October and help me stake out the orchard. He agreed, probably thinking I was overreacting but willing to humor me. We waited until we got one of those October nights with heavy fog rolling in from the river valley. That's when the activity always seemed to happen. We geared up with warm clothes, and Daniel brought his thermal imaging scope. The plan was to position ourselves near the forest edge and wait. Around midnight, Daniel spotted something on the thermal scope. He motioned me over and handed it to me. There were heat signatures moving through the orchard. Small ones, low to the ground. We watched them for a few minutes, then decided to follow. We tracked them for probably 2 hours, moving carefully through my own orchard, trying not to make noise. The fog was so thick we couldn't see more than 20 feet. But the thermal scope let us follow their heat signatures. They seemed to be moving in a pattern, going from tree to tree. At one point, the trail just stopped. We stood there confused until Daniel realized the heat signatures had backtracked. They deliberately walked backwards in their own footprints to create a dead end. We had to go back and find where they'd split off. This happened 3 or 4 more times. Each time we'd follow prints that seemed fresh, only to discover they led nowhere, and we'd have to retrace our steps. It was like whoever we were tracking was playing games with us, wasting our time deliberately. Eventually, we got deeper into the forest, maybe 3 miles from my property line. We hadn't seen active heat signatures for a while, just been following the footprints. Then Daniel stopped and grabbed my arm. He pointed ahead with the scope. I looked through it and felt my stomach drop. There were 5 figures in a small clearing, 2 large ones and 3 smaller ones. The small ones were in trees, moving around the branches with these quick, jerking movements. The larger ones were on the ground, and they appeared to be handing something up to the smaller ones in the trees. They were completely naked, all 5 of them, in 40-degree weather with heavy fog, just naked in the forest. I watched the small ones climb around those tree branches like they'd done it their whole lives, not careful climbing like a kid would do. Fast, confident movements. They'd grab onto branches and swing to other ones, stuffing something into their mouths between movements. Then the larger figures reached up, and 2 of the smaller ones dropped down onto their shoulders. The third small one stayed in the trees for a moment before dropping down and following on all 4s. All 5 of them started moving deeper into the forest, and within seconds they disappeared into the darkness. Daniel and I stood there frozen for at least 15 minutes. Neither of us said anything. Finally, Daniel whispered that we should mark the spot and come back in daylight. We used his GPS to mark the location, then headed back to my house. Neither of us slept that night. At first light, we went back out to the clearing with the sheriff's deputy. The trees the small ones had been climbing were apple trees. Wild ones that must have grown from seeds carried by birds or animals decades ago. The ground was covered in apple cores and pieces, but there was no other evidence. No footprints in the area because the ground was too hard. No sign of where they'd gone. The deputy looked around, took some notes, but I could tell he thought we'd seen homeless people or something. Daniel is a respected guy, former Marine, works as a contractor. He's not someone who makes things up or exaggerates, but even he seemed shaken by what we saw. He told the deputy exactly what we observed through the thermal scope. 5 people, 2 adults and 3 children it looked like, completely naked in cold weather, moving through the forest. The deputy said he'd file a report, but without evidence of a crime, there wasn't much they could do. Trespassing maybe, but they'd need to actually catch someone on my property. He suggested the people we saw might have mental health issues or be using drugs, which could explain the bizarre behavior. But that doesn't explain the bare feet in cold weather. That doesn't explain how they survived naked in those temperatures. That doesn't explain the systematic apple harvesting that's been happening for years. That doesn't explain the intelligent evasion tactics, the false trails, the dead ends, the backwards walking. Every year it happens, like clockwork. My wife keeps telling me we should sell the orchard, move somewhere else. But this has been in my family for 70 years. My dad worked this land his entire adult life. I don't want to give it up, but I also don't know what I'm dealing with. Daniel thinks they're feral people. Maybe a family that's been living in the national forest for generations. There are stories about stuff like that happening in remote areas, but the way they moved wasn't right. I've considered setting up camera traps throughout the orchard, but part of me doesn't want to know what I'd capture. The image from that thermal scope is already burned into my mind. Sometimes I wonder if my dad ever saw them, if he knew they were out there and just never told me. Maybe he figured it was better not to know. Better to just let them take some apples each year and not ask questions. I don't know if I can do that though. Every foggy October night now, I lie awake wondering if they're out there in my orchard, taking my apples, leaving their small bare footprints everywhere, teaching the young ones how to climb and harvest and evade. If anyone else owns property or live near old-growth forest in Washington, be aware in foggy nights in October. Check for small bare footprints. If you find them, maybe think carefully before following them like I did. Some questions don't have good answers. This happened back in October 2019, and I still get this sick feeling in my stomach when I think about it. I'm Tyler, and I need to tell someone about this, even though it sounds completely insane. I've been going back and forth on sharing this for years now, but I can't shake it. So, I'm usually a pretty logical guy, you know? I work in IT, I like my routines, and I definitely don't believe in paranormal crap or whatever. But I also love getting out into nature when I can. I'd been planning this solo camping trip for months. 3 days, 2 nights up at this remote trail about 4 hours north of where I live. Not many people know about it, which is exactly why I picked it. I wanted to get away from everything. No cell service, no people, just me in the woods. I remember it was one of those perfect October days when I started the hike. You know how fall gets. The leaves were just starting to turn. The air had that crisp bite to it. I was feeling good, had my pack loaded with everything I needed. I'd done solo trips before, so this was nothing new. Just a normal weekend getaway. The trail starts easy enough, follows this old creek for the first couple miles. I was listening to music at first, just enjoying the walk. The plan was to hike. About 6 miles in, set up camp near this clearing I'd seen on the trail maps. Then spend the next day exploring some of the side trails before heading back. Weather was perfect. Clear skies, maybe 60 degrees. I was making good time, feeling relaxed for the first time in weeks. Work had been stressing me out, and I just needed this. That feeling when you finally get away from all the noise. Everything was normal for the first few hours. I stopped for lunch around noon, had my sandwich by the creek, took some pictures. That's when I first noticed. Well, I thought I noticed something. I was packing up my lunch when I caught this movement in my peripheral vision. Just a quick shadow, maybe 50 yards away through the trees. I looked over, but there was nothing there. I figured it was probably just a deer or something. Wildlife. This is their home. But then it happened again about an hour later. Same thing. Movement in the corner of my eye, always just out of direct sight. This time I actually stopped and really looked around. Nothing. Just trees and shadows. I started paying more attention after that. Maybe I was being paranoid, but something felt off. Like, you know that feeling when someone's watching you? That weird prickly sensation on the back of your neck? Around 3 in the afternoon, I reached my planned camping spot. It's this nice little clearing with a fire ring someone had made years ago. Perfect spot. Flat ground, close to water, good sight lines. I was setting up my tent when I saw it again. This time, it wasn't just movement. There was definitely someone, or something, standing between 2 trees about 100 yards away. Just standing there, watching. My stomach dropped. I mean, I couldn't make out details or anything, but it was definitely a figure. Human-shaped. Dark clothing, maybe? Or just shadows? I couldn't tell. I blinked, looked away for a second, and when I looked back, nothing. Gone. Now I was officially freaked out. I'm not usually a paranoid person, but this didn't feel right. I mean, if it was another hiker, why just stand there watching? I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was shadows playing tricks on me. The sun was getting lower, creating all sorts of weird shapes through the trees. Maybe I was just tired from the hike. Maybe I was seeing things, but I couldn't shake that feeling of being watched. I finished setting up camp, but I kept looking over my shoulder. Every snap of a twig, every rustle in the leaves, I was on high alert. This wasn't how solo camping was supposed to feel. When I went to get water from the creek, I swear I heard footsteps. Not mine. These were coming from behind me, matching my pace. I'd stop, they'd stop. I'd start walking, they'd start again. But every time I turned around, there was nothing there. That night was the worst. I made a fire, cooked my dinner, tried to act normal, but I felt exposed. That circle of firelight just made me a perfect target for whatever was out there. I kept hearing things. Branches breaking, movement in the bushes. But when I'd shine my flashlight into the darkness, nothing. Just trees and shadows staring back at me. I barely slept. Every sound had me sitting up in my tent, listening. Around 3 in the morning, I heard what sounded like footsteps circling my campsite. Slow, deliberate steps, like someone was walking the perimeter of the clearing. I grabbed my flashlight and unzipped my tent. "Who's there?" I called out. My voice was shaking, which pissed me off. I'm not usually a scared guy, but this was different. Silence. Even the normal forest sounds had stopped. I swept my flashlight around the entire clearing. Nothing. But I swear I could feel eyes on me. That prickly, uncomfortable sensation was so strong it was making me sick. The next morning, I found the footprints. I was breaking down my tent when I noticed them. Boot prints in the soft dirt near the edge of my campsite. Not mine. These were bigger, and the tread pattern was completely different from my hiking boots. My hands started shaking as I looked at them. Something had been there. Something had been walking around my camp while I slept. That's when I noticed something else that made my blood run cold. The prints formed a complete circle around where I'd pitched my tent, like something had spent time just walking around me while I was sleeping. I felt like I was gonna throw up. This wasn't my imagination. This wasn't shadows or tricks of light. Something had been there, watching me, circling my tent like some kind of predator. I should have packed up and left right then. Every instinct was screaming at me to get the hell out of there. But I was also angry, you know? This was my trip, my escape, and some creep was ruining it. I decided to hike one of the side trails, thinking maybe if I kept moving, I could lose whoever was following me. Maybe they were just messing with some random camper and would get bored if I didn't give them what they wanted. But it got worse. About an hour into the side trail, I realized the footsteps I was hearing weren't echoes. Someone was definitely following me, staying just far enough back to remain hidden. I tried doubling back, taking random turns, even hiding behind trees to see if I could catch a glimpse of whatever it was. But it seemed to know the trail better than I did. Every time I tried to deviate from the main trail, I'd hear movement that would make me reconsider. Branches breaking just ahead if I tried to go left. Footsteps blocking the path if I tried to go right. It was like it was steering me deeper into the woods, further from the main trail. I started practically running back toward my campsite. I didn't care how it looked. I just needed to get my gear and get out. But when I got back to the clearing, I found something that made me freeze. My camp chair was moved. I'd left it facing the fire ring, but now it was turned toward the trail I'd just come back from. Like something had been sitting there, waiting for me to return, watching the path. I packed up faster than I've ever packed anything in my life. Threw everything in my backpack, didn't even bother rolling my sleeping bag properly. I just wanted out. The hike back to my car felt like the longest 6 miles of my life. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see that figure following me. Sometimes I thought I caught glimpses, a shadow moving between trees, always staying parallel to the trail but never getting closer. The worst part was realizing that whatever it was knew these woods way better than I did. It could have done anything to me out there. It could have approached my tent in the middle of the night. It could have. I don't know. But it didn't. It just watched, like it was studying me. When I finally made it back to my car, I've never been so relieved to see that beat-up Honda in my life. But as I was loading my pack into the trunk, I looked back toward the trailhead one more time. There, standing just inside the tree line, was the figure. Same dark shape I'd been seeing for 2 days. Just standing there watching me leave. I got in my car and didn't look back. I've never been solo camping since. Hell, I barely go hiking anymore, even with friends. And I definitely won't go anywhere near that trail. I used to drive a delivery route through rural Appalachia, regional courier work, picking up packages from small post offices and general stores in isolated towns. About 400 miles over 3 days each week. Same stops, same schedule, every single week. They gave me an unmarked white cargo van. No tracking beyond daily check-ins with dispatch. Company policy strictly prohibited weapons. So I never carried anything for protection, even driving alone on empty mountain roads for hours. This happened 8 months into the job, middle of October. Tuesday morning, I pulled into a post office parking lot in a small town. Population maybe 200. I was always first there at 7 a.m. The postmaster would see my van and unlock the side door to hand me packages. That morning, there was another car in the lot, a dark green sedan, older model, tinted windows. In 6 months of that stop, I'd never seen another vehicle there at 7 a.m. I noticed it but didn't think much of it. Wednesday, different town, 80 miles away. I pulled up to a general store around 9 a.m. and there was a dark green sedan parked across the street. I couldn't say for certain it was the same car, but something made me pause. The tint was dark enough I couldn't see inside. I went in, got my pickup, came back out. The car was still there. I sat in my van trying to decide if I was being paranoid. These towns are tiny. Maybe someone just happened to have the same car and the same schedule. It seemed more logical than any alternative. Thursday morning, my first stop was a post office in another small town. I got there at 7:15. The door was hanging open. I called out. Nobody answered. I walked up to look. The place was torn apart. Boxes ripped open. Packages scattered everywhere. The back door left wide open, like someone had torn through and left in a hurry, or fled quickly. I backed away and called the postmaster. He was confused, said he'd closed up fine the night before. He'd call the sheriff. I waited by my van. That's when I saw the dark green sedan parked at the end of the lot under some trees. Same car, I'm certain now. Nobody got out. Nobody visible inside. My heart started pounding. I sat there trying to figure out what to do. After 5 minutes that felt like an hour, I started the van and left. As I drove past, I tried to look inside, but the tint was too dark. I called dispatch. The sheriff called me later about the break-in, asked if I'd seen suspicious vehicles. I told him about the sedan. He took the description. I didn't see it again that day. By Thursday night, I was convincing myself I'd been paranoid. Maybe 3 different cars, and my brain had connected a pattern that wasn't there. I had a choice, drive 2 hours home or stay along the route. I usually stayed in a town of maybe 2,000 people. I'd park behind the grocery store overnight. Well lit, houses nearby, police station 3 blocks away. It felt safe. I parked where I always did. Back corner under a streetlight. A few other cars scattered around. Late shift workers, I assumed. I tried to sleep, but kept thinking about that sedan. Around 11 p.m. I gave up and watched downloaded videos on my phone. Doors locked, windows cracked slightly, privacy curtains pulled between the front and cargo area. Around 1 a.m., I heard footsteps on gravel. I turned off my phone and sat still, listening. The footsteps were slow, moving closer. Then they stopped. I stayed frozen, trying to convince myself it was someone walking to their car, but I hadn't heard a car door or engine. Then footsteps again, right next to my driver's side. I turned my head slowly, and my heart stopped. A woman's face was pressed against the glass, staring directly at me. I could barely see her in the darkness, but there was no mistaking it. Her face was inches from the window, hands cupped around her eyes. Looking right at me, I screamed. She pulled back and made a gesture, signaling someone. A man appeared at my back door. I heard metal scraping against the lock. I lunged for the driver's seat, fumbling for my keys. My hands were shaking. I kept looking back, watching the door handle jiggling as someone worked the lock outside. The woman was back at my window, saying something I couldn't hear. I got the keys in and turned the engine. It started. The man was using some kind of tool now, scraping, prying sounds. The handle moving differently, like the lock was about to give. I threw it in reverse and hit the gas. The back door swung open as I pulled away. I saw the man stumble back. I didn't look at his face. 20 feet later, I slammed the brakes. A dark green sedan was blocking the exit, parked at an angle. It had been tucked behind a dumpster, hidden. They'd been there the whole time, waiting. I threw it in drive and went around them, jumping the curb. My back door still swinging. I just drove. A mile down the road, I pulled into a 24-hour gas station and called 911. Police came in 20 minutes. I gave them everything. The woman, blonde or light brown hair maybe, but I wasn't sure. Never saw her face clearly. The man, just a figure in dark clothes. The sedan, dark green older model, tinted windows, no license plate. Too dark, and I was focused on escaping. They went back to the grocery store. Nobody there. That was it. No cameras in that corner. No witnesses. I drove home that night, called dispatch the next morning, took time off, got the door fixed, filed a report. Police never found anything. No sedan matching that description. No similar incidents reported. Nothing. I requested a route change. They moved me to a different region. I never went back. Here's what I can't stop thinking about. My route was public information. The company website posted general delivery schedules. Anyone could have looked up when I'd be at each location. Same stops every week, same times. That sedan followed me for at least 3 days, maybe longer. The broken into post office. I don't know what that was about. Maybe a distraction, maybe completely unrelated. But I saw that sedan at 3 locations, 80 to 100 miles apart, over 3 days. Then they were waiting with tools to break into my van. In a van they knew I was sleeping in. What 2 people wanted with a delivery driver in an empty cargo van at 1 in the morning, I can only speculate. Police asked if I ever carried anything valuable. Just packages and manifests, nothing worth stealing. They seemed puzzled. I prefer not to think about what they were actually after. I still drive delivery routes, different ones now. I check my mirrors constantly. Never park the same place twice. I got special permission to carry pepper spray, even though it's against policy. Sometimes I see dark green sedans and my stomach drops before I realize it's not the same one. At least, I hope it's not. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more. And check the description to know how to submit your own true horror story. Until next time, Blurred Lines out.